It's recording.
Okay. Hi, my name is Heidi. I'm from Animal Emergency and Referral Center of Minnesota, and this is my dog Sally. And this is part 2 of our 2-part video series on walking your dog. Now that we've covered the cold weather walking, we're just going to talk about general equipment for walking your dog in any kind of weather. Obviously, you want to have a collar for your dog so that they're under control, and there are several different ways to go about that. This is Sally's collar. It's just a leather collar. You can see she's very interested in it. She knows it's her collar. It's got both her ID tag and her rabies tag on here to show that she's been vaccinated for rabies. It's always great to have the ID on your pet because if they get away from you, anytime, night or day, you want people to be able to get a hold of you and get your pet back home. So that is Sally's flat buckle collar, and we can use that to walk her by. We want to make sure that when she has her collar on, we can't get more than 2 fingers under the collar. If we can fit our whole hand between the collar and her neck, it's probably too loose. And certainly dogs can slip their collars when you're walking them. They get excited, they see something they want to go after, and they can slip their heads right out of those collars, and then you've lost your dog. So it's really important that it fit properly. The other piece of equipment that we use for Sally when we're walking is a gentle leader. You can call it a harness collar, a head collar, but they are really great to control certain types of behavior. Sally likes to bark a lot at other dogs when we encounter them on walks, and she also likes to pull. And when she's wearing her gentle leader, I find that those behaviors, although they don't disappear completely, they do decrease significantly. So this collar, if you purchase a gentle leader collar, will come with an entire book on how to properly fit it. But the idea is that it goes over their nose, and then it buckles behind their head, very much like a horse's harness. And then it attaches to her leash right down here. And when she pulls, she feels a pressure on top of her nose. It's not uncomfortable, but she doesn't want to pull against that pressure, so she backs up towards me instead of pulling against it. Whereas with a flat buckle collar, she feels the pressure on her neck and she pulls against that pressure. So it works really well to keep her from pulling, and like I said, it reduces her barking behavior somewhat as well. So this is just a behavioral correction for Sally on her walks, but if your dog is well behaved on a walk, you may not need something like this. Another option for dogs on a walk is a harness, and this one's obviously not for Sally. It's a really big one. This is a harness. It's called an Easy Walk harness, and it's also designed to keep dogs from pulling. So you put it on the dog, his head comes up through here and his chest is in here. You hook this to the leash, and this is also designed to keep them from pulling on a walk. But it can also be used on long-backed dogs to keep from injuring them when they're on a walk. Sometimes dogs have back injuries or arthritis, and a harness is better than pulling on their neck. Another type of collar, and certainly not Sally's collar, is a prong collar. And these have to be used very, very wisely and carefully. These are going to be used for dogs who are really bad pullers and who also aren't very sensitive in terms of correction. So if you have a dog, usually it may be a bully breed or a really large, like a bull mastiff or a Malamute or something like that, and they just pull mercilessly and they won't stop pulling. Something like this provides some uncomfortable pressure with these prongs, and then they're supposed to stop pulling. If they continue to pull with this, it's not the appropriate collar because it can injure them. So these have to be used very, very carefully with dogs and make sure that they're not abused, because we obviously don't want to injure our pets. So that's it for collars. The only other collar that I don't have represented is called a choke collar, similar to the prong collar, except without the prongs. And it would go like this slip lead around the dog's neck. It would just be a collar instead of a big long lead. And when the dog pulls, it tightens, but then when the dog isn't pulling, it relaxes. And the way you make sure that happens is when you put it on your dog, it should look like a P instead of the other way around. Because if it looks like this, it's gonna pull and tighten, and then it won't It won't loosen again. And then your dog will choke and feel that pressure regardless of whether they're pulling or not. So the idea is, again, it's a correctional collar. It should only ever be used, as well as the prong collar should only ever be used when you are monitoring your dog. You should never leave a dog unattended with a prong collar or a choke chain on, because they could get the end caught on something and, you know, hurt or kill themselves by choking with that collar. So those have to be used very carefully. In terms of leashes, a lot fewer options than there are for collars. This is just a plain buckle leash, just a flat lead. It's about 6 feet long, and that's pretty standard for most leashes. You'll find shorter leashes for show rings, but for the most part 6 inches or 6 feet, sorry, is very standard. You know, obviously just a buckle on this end and then a loop on this end. And for safety purposes, you should really put your hand through that end and hold the leash like this at all times, just in case if your dog gets very excited on a walk, tries to run after a squirrel or another animal, you've got tight control of your dog. Another option is a flexi leash. This one's much longer than 6 feet. I'm guessing it's 20, probably 12 to 20. It's got a locking mechanism, so if you are approaching another dog and you don't want your dog to get away, you can lock it. So it's nice and short, and they're close to you. You have to be very, very careful with flexi leads. I do like to use these for my dogs when I'm walking them at night and there's not a lot of people around, but certainly they're not really appropriate for taking a walk around a busy lake or where there's going to be a lot of people, like at a festival or an event, because you'd have to lock them all the time. Your dog's going to be getting in other people's and other animals' space, and it's very difficult to maintain a proper control with a flexi collar. Plus, you can't put your hand through here, so you know you're just holding on, and your dog gives one hard tug, and all of a sudden the leash is going with them, and your dog is loose. So these aren't my favorite, and like I said, I will only use this with my dogs if there's not a lot of people or other animals around. The other thing you have to be careful with is, even if there aren't a lot of people or animals around, if a dog approaches, make sure it's locked. If a runner comes towards you, make sure it's locked, because your dog can trip people with this, or you know, start a dog fight easily, and you have very little control ultimately with a leash like this. So those are the major pieces of equipment for walking your dog. Other things to keep in mind: not everybody is aware that when a dog has a yellow ribbon on their leash, that means to stay away. So I'm here to spread that message. If you see someone with a yellow ribbon on their dog's leash or collar, that is a warning sign to you that their dog is not great with other people or other dogs, and stay away. And in general, it's not a great idea to let two dogs go nose to nose when they're on leash. Leashes can actually make dogs far more defensive than they are off leash. And your dog can feel any tension that you have in your body or any hesitation you have about letting him meet another dog. They feel that through the leash. And so when you tighten the leash up or you get nervous, your dog will respond, and they usually don't respond pleasantly. So it's just a good idea to keep dogs separated when you're walking. Walk by other animals as quickly as you can and not really let them go nose to nose. If you do let the dogs go nose to nose and their bodies start to stiff up and they get very rigid body posture, move away quickly. Oh, over here, you know, give them a treat, distract them, whatever you can do to remove your dog from that situation, because certainly it can result in a dog fight. And those are all the tips that we have to share with you today. Thanks very much for watching.